Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mark Moss Show, where we talk about the decentralized revolution each and every week, talking about the way the world is changing, because it is changing fast. And most people don't realize it because it's kind of like the proverbial frog in the boiling pot of water. And some see the changes, but they don't understand what's going on. And so we're trying to bring context to that. The world is changing. We're going from a unipolar world to a multipolar world. Everything is decentralizing. The way the world is made up, the global trade, and the money. Of course, we look at it through the lens of politics, finance, and technology. The technology being Bitcoin and the decentralized technology that brings us. And, I try to bring to you some interesting perspectives and some lessons so you can start to see the world a little bit differently. You can start to understand really what's going on behind the headlines. I want to bring to you some of the latest breaking news so you know what's going on. And so I keep you informed when you go to that family gathering or that cocktail party, or maybe in this case, New Year's party. You're going to look like the smartest person there because you're going to be up to date. And then I try to bring to you some interesting guests so you don't have to just hear me talking all the time. You can get some different perspectives. And we have all of that and more coming up for you. I'm super excited. We're going to dig right in and get going here. What I want to talk about is something big and pressing that you need to be aware of. And it could be, not could be, it will be, it is the single biggest threat to your freedom, the single biggest threat to your way of life, the single biggest threat to your kids and grandkids' way of life. And I changed it from a maybe to it will be, and I'm calling it the. It is the biggest. I've framed this up in many conversations. I had a big conversation on my friend Peter McCormick's podcast called What Bitcoin Did. It's titled The Battle for the Fate of Humanity. And so it's that big. In my opinion, it's that big. Go watch that interview, What Bitcoin Did. Mark Moss, just search that. You'll find that. But I want to talk about something more timely, more relevant, because this is coming fast. It's not just some big theoretical thing. It's coming. It's here. It's here. And it's coming for you. And if you're not aware and you're not able to help push this narrative and wake people up to this and discuss it with your friends and family over this holiday weekend, and more importantly, push back politically on this, it's going to come. And you're going to be enslaved by it. So let's talk about that. So what am I talking about? Well, like I said, some recent events. So I'm going to talk about the recent events, but let's back up just a little bit, because if you really understand these things, you have to understand the reasons, the motivatives, and like I said, break it down to kind of this first principles level I talk about all the time. So let's go back in time, back in history, not too far back. We'll go back about 60 years and 70 years roughly, and we're going to go to a president of the United States, President Lyndon Johnson. President Lyndon Johnson might be one of the most researched, most written about presidents that we have. There's several books that have been written. Over 3,000 pages have been written about Lyndon Johnson. And when you go back and you look through some of these books, the Years of Lyndon Johnson collection, it's called, as you read through this, there's one overarching, inescapable conclusion that you come to, and that is that Lyndon Johnson was certainly the most corrupt person ever to achieve that power. Now, at that point, I'm sure it's been surpassed many times since then, but he was the most corrupt person, and he was willing to say or do anything as long as it would give him more power. All right. Now, like I said, this is through lots of research. Now, he was elected to Congress in his late 20s. He was known for literally, not figuratively, but literally handing out bags of cash to other politicians in order to get his end goal of getting more power. Now, not just that, talk about, election fraud. He did it. It's documented. In 1948, he stole the Texas Democratic primary for U.S. Senate. The official tally showed that he beat his opponent by 87 votes out of 1 million. But that's not where the controversy is. The scandal is that all of a sudden, at the last minute, after the votes were tallied, magically 202 votes appeared out of nowhere. Sound familiar? This is not new. It's been going on a long time. This is 1948. All of a sudden, 202 votes appeared. And all from the same precinct. And magically, 200 of the 202 were for Johnson. And even more magically or amazingly or coincidentally, however you view the world, All 202 votes were cast in alphabetical order. Pretty interesting. Just coincidentally, that just happened, I suppose. Now, if that wasn't enough to tell you that there was something going on, where there's smoke, there's fire, Lyndon Johnson actually claimed it. He jokingly mocked it. He openly referred to himself as, quote, landslide Lyndon. So he mocked it. He joked about it. He acknowledged this. And so, his whole term, his whole presidency was shrouded in this. And it wasn't just the presidency. He was in office for over 30 years. And it's notable that he entered Congress dirt broke, dirt poor. He was poor. And he stayed in office for over 30 years, all the way up to president, where he ended in 1969. But what's important is that he entered as a public servant, earning a public servant wage, dirt broke, and within 30 years, he was valued at well over $100 million. What kind of career can you put away $100 million? Now, if you know anything about the baby boomer generation right now, the largest segment of the population is all retiring. Over half of them who have worked for more than 30 years, over half of them have no savings at all, have none. And the half that do have like only a few $1,000s on average saved. I mean, it's a massive problem that we're going to have. That's a whole topic for another story. But the point is that all of these baby boomers have worked for 30 years and they're broke. He worked for 30 years as a public servant on a public servant salary and retired with $100 million. Now, this is nothing new for politics. Of course, you can see there's the Pelosi, and you can see the Pelosi tracker. She has outperformed, her investments have outperformed every single Wall Street hedge fund and every single person who spends, hundreds of millions of dollars on research and studying this, and she just outperforms them all. And so it's no surprise this is how it works. The government just spent all this time to get Donald Trump's tax returns, and we need to release Donald Trump's tax returns. Look, we know how he made his money. He's a real estate mogul. He owns hotels. He owns golf courses. He has TV shows. We get it. I want the tax returns of Nancy Pelosi, who's been a public servant this whole time and is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That's what I want to see. I want to see the tax returns of Obama, who came in dirt broke as a community organizer and is now worth hundreds of millions of dollars. That's what I want to see. We already know how Donald Trump made his money. But of course, we won't see that. Now, it's no surprise that the U.S. citizens' trust in government, polls done that show how much we trust our government, peaked at the time of Johnson's presidency. At 77% of U.S. people trusted the government. And of course, it's continued to slide ever since. And it is at the lowest point it's ever been in history. It's at less than 20% today. Less than 2 out of 10 people trust the government. Of course, why would they? Why would they? How could they? Unless you are completely blind and ignorant and dumb, there's just no way you can trust it, because they come out and tell us that they're lying to us over and over. That's another topic for another day, but I mean, just look very quickly. We have all this information that came out on Twitter where the government has been manipulating and censoring, which is against our constitutional rights. And now the FBI came out and said, what are you talking about? You guys are crazy with your conspiracy theories. This is no conspiracy. Yes, we do it. We do it all the time. We do it with all the platforms. They're saying, what are you guys thinking this is a conspiracy for? It's no conspiracy. Yes, we do it. We're admitting it. Yes, we actively manipulate the data you see. And yes, we actively manipulate and lie to you to push our own agenda. They said it. They admitted it. So why would we trust them? And of course we don't. It's at the lowest point ever. Now, this type of behavior has just become more and more normal, which is why trust has continued to erode. We can see that we've had one scandal after another, and scandals that have taken out other presidents like Richard Nixon, who had to resign in disgrace over Watergate. That's just common practice today. That's like nothing, right? Today, we have members of Congress openly and flagrantly doing like insider trading like Nancy Pelosi, which is illegal for you and I. It's a crime. So they're openly doing crimes in front of us, flaunting it, bragging about it, but yet it's illegal for you and I. So who would trust them? The amount of fraud and crime being done by our lawmakers and the government itself is just at an all-time high. I mean, it's just rampant. We know now the government, of course, hired all these 87,000 IRS agents, want to spend billions of dollars to come audit you if you spend more than $600 on Venmo or PayPal, $600, but yet the Pentagon, the military-industrial complex, just lost another $2 trillion, right? So they've been losing trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. When I say losing it, not like lost it gambling, meaning that like, oh, you gave it to us, but we just don't know where it went. They've failed the audit over and over and over. As a matter of fact, they've never passed an audit, and they say maybe they'll pass an audit in 2027, 5 years from now. So how would we trust them? Of course we don't. And so this government has continued to grow, get more and more and more corrupt. And we have this entire industry of what we call rent seekers or gatekeepers, right? And so we have, consultants and attorneys and lobbyists that sit in the way trying to extract rent, trying to extract their fees from every single piece of this and making it almost impossible for you and I as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, to even navigate this without having to pay every single pocket, which is why it's so expensive and so hard and so long and so arduous, which is why so few people do it. And that's a whole nother topic. But as this corruption continues to grow, so does the government's need grow to contain it. Not contain the corruption, but to contain you and I's outrage over this. They don't want citizens to be mad and do something about this. Now, they don't have any problem. They're not trying to hide it. They do it in the open. But they don't want us to get other people worked up. They don't want to get other people outraged, which is why they have to do everything they can to wrangle us down, censor what we say, censor the information that we see, censor what we're able to do, censor what we do with $600. With $600. So, how do they do this? Well, lots of ways. Using the FBI on social media is one. But the one weapon that's the biggest risk, the one weapon that supersedes all of these is the ability to control how you and I transact in the economy. I've been saying it over and over and over for months. Without the freedom to transact, there is no freedom, period. So we have all these freedoms guaranteed to us by the Constitution, freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and freedom of religion and all these things. But without the freedom to transact, none of those freedoms make sense or are accessible. So I can't go assemble if I can't transact to put gas in my truck or buy food when I get there, a hotel room when I get there, etc. I have freedom of speech, but if I can't pay to get a phone to go on social media or pay to print a flyer or build a website, how do I have freedom of speech today? And so it all hinges on that, which is their one weapon. And of course, I reference all the time back to the three-prong attack that we've been facing, which is Henry Kissinger laid out perfectly, which is control the food, you control the people, control the energy, you control the continent, control the money, you control the world. And of course, if you look at what's happening in the world today, those are the three attacks. Our food is under attack, our energy is under attack, and of course, the money. The money is the one weapon that supersedes anything. And there was an article that was written by Ben Hunt from Epsilon Theory. Really, really good article. And he talks about how the goal of the government is to see and preside over all the money in the world, because once that power is obtained, it's game over. Remember, control the money, you control the world. Let's dig into that article a little bit. So he says that the goal of the U.S. Treasury is to see all the money in the world. They want to see it all. My favorite, the godfather of management, Peter Drucker, says, what gets measured gets managed. So you have to see all the data first. And once you collect all the data, see all the data, then you can start to manage the data. And so the first step is to see it all. I want to see all the money in the world. In the article, epsilontheory.com, you can check it out. He says that anti-money laundering. And so what you're seeing is that there's this attack on money. The reason why they tell us, the reason why the government, the IRS, has to look at every transaction you do over $600. Never mind the Pentagon, never mind the CIA, the warmongers that are assassinating people all over the world. Never mind that they can't find trillions of dollars, but you and your $600 in your Venmo or PayPal could potentially lead to money laundering. You could be money laundering. Now, they use that as justification, not just for taxes. It's not because you're avoiding your taxes, because you could use it to finance terrorists, and terrorism is bad. I mean, you don't want your kids getting blown up at school or at the mall, do you? So then you should just let us inspect everything, right? That is the reasoning. However, what he says here is that what anti-money laundering, AML regulations are really about what Know Your Customer or KYC regulations are all about, what Report on Foreign Bank Account and Financial Accounts, FBAR regulations are all about, what the Treasury-led Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, or SWIFT, is all about, or the Bank Secrecy Act, BSA, is all about. None of those programs, and there's even more, none of those are about taxes. None of them are about catching crooks or stopping terrorism. None of those. What the program, because what's your $600 going to do? I mean, come on, literally, we're sending billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to terrorists. We're arming them. We're giving them weapons. So your $600 is a problem when we give hundreds of billions of dollars to terrorists with weapons. We give them, like, come on. So your $600. So anyway, none of it's about that. What these programs are really about is information. Data. What gets measured gets managed. It's about information, and information for information's sake regarding the greatest source of power in the world, which is money. Control the money, control the world. So they need all the information on all the money. And he calls, I really love this framing, he calls the U.S. Treasury the Eye of Sauron. He calls it a gigantic panopticon tower that sweeps the world with its unblinking gaze, seeking out the owners of power, i.e. money. Now, he's saying that the giant, all-seeing eye of the U.S. Treasury is built on two regulatory structures, really. So I named off a bunch, but really he breaks it down to two. The Bank Security Act, the BSA, which compels transparency and reporting by financial institutions on their clients and themselves. All right? And so that's your bank. If you go get cash out of the bank has to fill out SARS, suspicious activity reports on you. They have to file this. Everybody has to know what everyone's doing. And then the second is the Report on Foreign Bank and Financial Accounts, or FBAR, system to compel transparency and reporting by individuals on their financial institutions and themselves. And so no matter where you have your money, in the United States, outside the United States, foreign assets, whatever, everything has to be reported in to the Treasury's FinCEN, Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN. So that's what's going on. Now, I'm going to break down how they're about to use technology to change all of this to make it even easier, make it effortless, let's call it that, to take all this information, see, as he calls it, the Eye of Sauron, see all this information to control you. Control the money, control the world. That's exactly what they're doing. I summarized a lot of this in an article or a podcast I did on what Bitcoin did. It's titled The Battle for the Fate of Humanity, which kind of shaped up where we're going. Now we're kind of breaking this down because there's a lot of recent developments, a lot of recent laws, a lot of new technologies that have been put into place that are bringing this to head right now. Like, this is not like some far-off future thing. This is like right now. Like, if you're not up to date right now, if you're not actively telling other people, warning other people, and pushing back on this right now, then this is the future that you're facing. As I was reading from this Epsilon Theory article, Ben Hunt, he's calling the U.S. Treasury the Eye of Sauron, sweeping the world with its unblinking gaze, seeking out the owners of power, i.e. money. And so we are breaking that down. Now, back to some of the technology pieces that we're talking about. So we have this. The Treasury tells you that we have to shine a flashlight in your account to see your $600 transaction because you could be funding terrorism. But it's not about that. It's not about terrorism. Your $600 isn't doing anything about terrorism. It's not about anti-money laundering. It's not about any of that. And they would say, well, what's money laundering anyway? Well, it's for taxes. It's not about taxes. Look, they don't need your money. The government runs trillion-dollar deficits. Where do they get the trillions of dollars? They print them. If they can just go print trillions of dollars, what do they need your tax money for? The answer is they don't. It's not about taxes. It's not about terrorism. It's about control. Control the money, control the world. So what we can see is that I've been talking about this, over and over and over for the last 6-7 months, is these blowups in the cryptocurrency sector: Terra Luna, Celsius, Three Arrows Capital, and now, of course, recently, FTX. Now, I made a video on my YouTube channel, my main YouTube channel, Mark Moss, which, by the way, you can watch these episodes that I'm talking to you right now, if you want to watch me at the same time, on my YouTube channel called Market Disruptors. These go up there. You can. They're all archived, so if you missed part of this, go back and watch it on Market Disruptors. But on my main YouTube channel, Mark Moss, I break down big topics, and I've been breaking down this FTX saga. And one of the videos I made, I called it a psyop, meaning could this entire FTX fiasco been created to cause an uproar, to gain public perception or public approval to ram through all these new initiatives and proposals that they have. So there's lots of noise going on, and that's obviously speculation. Of course, we'll never be able to prove that. But what we do know is that there's all this noise going on. The crypto sector, it's bad, it's dangerous. This guy, SBF, he defrauded all these people. Millions of Americans lost all their life savings. And so, please, government, help us. Help us, save us, save us. I gave my money to somebody I didn't know, and I didn't trust him, and I didn't do any due diligence, and I didn't assess the risk, and I lost my money. So please come and save me. That's basically what's happening. But buried in all that noise is now the setup that the government needs to finally take away all the last bits of your individual privacy, and they'll do it with something called a central bank digital currency, or we call them CBDCs. Now, of course, I've talked about CBDCs many, many times on this show, but this is what they finally need to get people to beg them to come in and fix this and to finally snuff out the last vestiges of individual privacy by taking away our money. Now, this is nothing new, right? And it's nothing new at all. I mean, this has been done for thousands of years throughout history, is that there's events that cause a shift in public perception that then governments can use then to push their agenda, right? Was it Emmanuel under the Obama administration? I think he said, never let a crisis go to waste. And so, of course, then it leads to, potentially what would be called false flag attacks, where the government pretends that something bad happened so they could then push their agenda. And so like 9/11, for example, I'm not saying that was a false flag attack, but 9/11 was used as a way to take away more personal freedom than any other time in history. If you don't know that, when I think about 9/11, I obviously think about the people that died there. I can remember vividly where I exactly was standing when I watched the TV and it happened. So that's a big deal for me. But what I also remember is it's the day that freedom died. We lost more freedom that day than any other time in history in one fell swoop with something called the Patriot Act. And so these types of events have a way to do that. Now, of course, they did that in the name of security because, of course, you don't, as I said, don't want your kids being blown up at school. Terrorism is bad. I don't want that. You don't want that. And so if we just give up all our privacy, if they can just spy on every piece of communication that you have, if they can read every text message and every email and just watch everything, then maybe they could protect us. They could keep us from another terrorist attack, right? And so that's what they used. And now we have basically the same thing, but now instead of just your security, well, still your security, but now, all these criminals that are hiding in this digital asset space, in this cryptocurrency space, and now they're using cryptocurrency to launder money and to fund terrorism. And that's bad, right? And so we should also regulate all that so we could protect you from that. And so they're using that as a way to justify a shift to change the way citizens interact with each other and the economy. And there is no economy. The economy is made up of us, of people. You have to stop and think sometimes, like, there is no state. There's us, there's people. Collectively, we make up an economy or a market. There is no market on its own. There is only people within the market. But they want to change the way that we interact with each other, which then, of course, makes up the economy. And they're doing that with CBDCs. Now, how close are we to this actually being real? I've been talking about it for a long time. Is this something that's 5 years out or 30 years out, or is this something that's 5 months out? Well, it's a lot closer to 5 months, all right? And you need to know about it so you can be actively resisting this. Now, if you're just catching up, a CBDC is basically no different than fiat currency. So a lot of times people think, well, Mark, the fiat money system that we have is dying, and the sovereign debt bubble is bursting, and they're going to use this as a way to usher in a new currency to save the system. But look, CBDCs are no different than what we have today in regards to that, in regards to fiat currency, in regards to a way that the government controls the supply of the money, and they can expand and decrease the supply of the money whenever they want. That's the problem, right? So they're continuing continuing to expand the fiat money system, which continues to lower your purchasing power or steals your value. And then they increase the money supply, which pushes prices up, and we buy less and less goods. And then they suck it all out, and then everything crashes, and you watch your retirement account, your account and your house and everything crash in value, which is what we're happening right now. It's this constantly changing supply of the money that's the problem. And so a CBDC does not fix that. It's the exact same thing. As a matter of fact, it makes it even easier for them. Now they could just give money directly out to the people as opposed to having to go through this pesky banking system and all those other things. So this doesn't change anything in regards to the boom and bust cycles, in regards to the government stealing your money through inflation. It doesn't change any of that. But what it does change is your privacy. What it does change is your freedom. Okay? So it's not going to fix anything financially, but it is going to change the way that we interact with each other. Like I said, your freedom, your privacy, and so forth. So how does it do that? Now, what we're seeing already is this is being angled. We know that obviously China was the first one to roll this out. Lots of other countries, Europe is on the forefront of this, but also in the United States, the Federal Reserve is on the forefront of this as well. As a matter of fact, they rolled out their test, and the Fed is testing right now, and they're only using it for interbank transactions right now, supposedly. But that's how all the tests work. You got to test it with a small subsample first, and then you expand it out. Now, what we would see is that the countries would want to mandate that you use their money for everything. So it's a replacement for your cash. It's a replacement to your credit cards, any other of these payment systems that you have. And once it's linked to an individual's online digital identity, then it would be impossible to participate in the economy without every aspect of your behavior being monitored. So think social credit score system. Anybody like China? So you can't buy a bus ticket, a plane ticket. You can't put gas in your car without them allowing you to do that. The fact that you can transact with cash is a problem for them. Now, they can already see most of the transactions. We're all using our debit cards, our credit cards, our wire transfers, our bank accounts, etc. However, that data is not readily accessible to them. So it's still not that easy. They have to get all these pesky warrants and things like that. But with a CBDC, all of that changes. Not only can they see everything, but they can control everything. Because central bank digital currency, CBDCs, it's not cryptocurrency. It's a centrally controlled cryptocurrency, but it's programmable money. So they can program it in advance. So, you shouldn't be eating so much red meat. You've already bought too much, so now your credit card doesn't work for that transaction. And, your carbon score has is gone over your allotment, so you can't put gas in your car today. Or you posted something mean online, so now you can't buy a bus ticket or a plane ticket, or whatever it is. So they can program that in. They can control it. They can see it. And so for that reason, it should be opposed with every ounce of your being. You need to, as I like to say, spread the brush fires in the minds of men. Don't just listen to this. Go discuss this. Go discuss this with your family and your friends at these parties. Because these CBDCs, they're coming. And they're coming. Like I said, they're not. No, let me rephrase that. They're not coming. They are here. They're in China. They're rolling out in Europe, and the U.S. Federal Reserve is already testing them, all right? They're already here. Now, there was an article published last week by the Atlantic Council, and the Atlantic Council frames this issue as a need for the U.S. to implement a CBDC in order to, quote, win some arbitrary international arms race. Because if the Federal Reserve doesn't hurry up and get their CBDC out, then other countries are going to beat us to the punch, and the U.S. is going to fall behind the world. The U.S. has the reserve currency of the entire world, and we could potentially lose that if we don't have technology, if we don't beat these other countries. Look, that's the most ridiculous thing ever. The U.S. dollar is the reserve currency of the world for many reasons, but most importantly because it can actually be used as a reserve. What does that even mean? Most people have never even thought this through. Why isn't, Mark, but the Chinese yuan or the Russian ruble is going to be the next reserve currency? Really? In order to have a reserve currency, there must be a working financial market. So when sovereign nations hold that dollar as reserves, meaning their savings, right? So you're a sovereign nation or a sovereign wealth fund. You have hundreds of billions of dollars potentially, trillions of dollars potentially if you're China, Japan, etc. Where do you hold trillions of dollars? Well, first of all, where do you hold trillions of value? You could hold it in gold, you could hold it in Turkish lira, which is losing value, or you could hold it in dollars. So they hold it in dollars. But how? They don't hold it in Wells Fargo or JP Morgan with like actually cash. They hold it in treasuries, in bonds. Okay, so you have to have a working treasury bond market that's trusted and transparent and big enough to be liquid to get in and out of it for it to be used as a reserve. China, Russia, they don't have that. They don't have it. They won't have it anytime soon. So there's no threat to the reserve currency. There's just none. There's none. Okay? So there's no, as the Atlantic Council frames up, there's no arms race to that. As a matter of fact, the dollar has been expanded its reach because dollars being used through stable coins. And so now people all over the world are using U.S. dollar stable coins as a form of cryptocurrency. It's a whole other rabbit hole I'm not going to go into. So the dollar is only growing right now. There's no arms race. But of course, that's how they want to frame it up to get your buy-in. Now, the Cato Institute, which is a libertarian think tank, which, I don't agree with anybody on every single thing. Obviously, I love the libertarian think tank and some of the things that they put out, but there's also some things that are just kind of atrocious. But anyway, the think tank, the libertarian think tank, Cato Institute, they also published a piece in July, and they titled it "Central Bank Digital Currencies and Freedom Are Incompatible." The truth is, they said, quote, "The truth is CBDCs are government's attempt to protect its privileged position and exert more control over people's money. But money itself is not a public good. The fact that its production has been increasingly encroached upon by the government does not make it a public good." So what they're saying is, look, money's not a public good. Gold has been money for 5,000 years. Anybody with land can go find a piece of gold and just get it out of the ground. It's not a public good. And just because the government has been getting involved in making it, they've encroached into it, doesn't make it a public good, right? It doesn't automatically change that. It says the fact that something called a CBDC even exists is owed only to payment innovations that occurred in the private market. So these central bank digital currencies or these cryptocurrencies happen in the private market. All innovation happens in the private market. The government cannot create something cannot give something it has not taken. It's not creating anything. It's not a public good. It's a private good. That's where it was started. Now they're trying to co-opt it. But they went on to say that the real danger of CBDCs is that there is no limit to the level of control that the government could exert over people if money is purely electronic and provided directly by the government. It would give the government full control over the money going in and out of every single person's account. And they go on to say that, quote, "This level of government control is not compatible with economic or political freedom." Because, again, as I said, without the freedom to transact, there is no freedom. If I don't have the freedom to transact, like right now, what we're seeing in the United States, which is obviously happens in the Banana Republic, what we're seeing right now is that we're basically in the Banana Republic. We have political parties now prosecuting their opposing parties, like Zelensky did when he took power in the Ukraine, and he just took the democratically elected leader and put him in jail, and he just took power. And now we have the Democrats going after, trying to prosecute the other side, the Republican Party. Now, I'm not trying to draw sides here, but what we're witnessing is an attack against political opponents like we've never seen before. And if they can control the money, well, then they could say, well, we don't recognize that political party, and so we're not going to allow you to send them money, for example, right? Without the freedom to transact, there is no freedom. So how do you have a democratic country where you supposedly have a voice if you're not free to spend your money? Now, your money is your private property. You should be able to use your money as you see fit. Now, we have laws for illegal things, so I'm not saying that it's my money. I should be able to allow to use my money to go murder somebody or pay someone to go murder someone. I'm not saying that because we have a law against that. It's illegal to murder, by the way. But it doesn't change the fact of what I do with my money. Now, I'm free to send my money to that guy to go murder someone, the hitman, if I want, but then I'm also having to deal with the repercussions. But As they said, the level of government control is not compatible with economic or political freedom. Without the freedom to transact, we don't have any at all. And just because we're in this, the frog in the proverbial pot of boiling water, and we have been witnessing government corruption scale to levels that nobody would have ever thought back in the 50s and 60s when Lyndon Johnson was president, doesn't change the fact that we are here now. We are witnessing corruption at a level we've never seen. And of course, like I said, the only way they can continue to keep this charade is 100% total control, and central bank digital currencies are the way to do this. Now, like I said, my challenge to you is don't just listen to this. Go and discuss it. Spread these ideas. Samuel Adams said it doesn't take a majority to prevail, but rather a small, irate minority, keen on setting brush fires in the minds of men. And so if this resonates with you, if this wakes you up, if this infuriates you, if this makes you mad, if this seems like a world you don't want, then go spread that brush fire to someone else. Talk about it with them. Even better, everyone send an email. Make a phone call, send a letter to your local leaders, your local lawmakers, and tell them you don't want this, because there is a fight. There's a fight. Some lawmakers don't want this, and we can win. You're listening to The Mark Moss Show, talking about the decentralized revolution. That's what I got. Hope you enjoyed it.